Okay, I think that's everyone in. Lastly, we would encourage you to share today's webinar with your colleagues or any other agents that you think would find this session beneficial. Now, without further ado, I'm going to kick things off by welcoming Tripfuser's CEO and Managing Director, Matt McCann. Matt McCann, over to you.
Very good. Thanks, Ash. I'm not sure how I grabbed the screen, but you might sort that out for me. There we go. Thanks, everyone, and welcome. It's great to be able to be talking to our agent community today, the first of these that we've run. And it gives me a chance today to talk a little bit about Tripfuser and how it works, a little bit about the state of the market and kind of how we see things developing over the next, 3, 6, 18 months, and talk a little bit about the ways in which Tripfuser can start to help you have, more meaningful travel conversations with your clients in what is undoubtedly the most extreme and challenging circumstances I think anyone sitting in here would have ever faced, that we face in travel today. I'll probably start by acknowledging what a difficult time it's been. I think there's anyone who'd be joining us within our network or anyone even within the Tripfuser family that isn't, affected heavily by what's happened with COVID-19. I think if any of us thought back to say, December last year, we were sitting here thinking the idea that international travel would be largely shut down, domestic travel would be heavily challenged, and the ability of crossing borders would be, frankly, in some cases illegal, was pretty unheard of. So we're living in obviously very unprecedented times. And I think from our end, we're very grateful for the support we get from our travel agent network. And we're incredibly supportive, thankful for you to joining us today just to learn a little bit more about the business and how it works. If I kind of start a little bit with, what's our mission? What do we get up every day and try and deliver? I think our job at Tripfuser is to bring amazing local custom travel experiences to you, to your clients. And that's both, domestically here, within our close to home travel bubble, if you will, and then globally once borders are open. I think we at Tripfuser thrive on the idea that there are experiences out there that can't be found in most of the digital universe that are rich and deep and provide an extraordinary travel experience for anyone who experiences them. And our job is to try and find a way to connect those experiences to you for your clients. Tripfuser itself is just coming up on sort of 4 years old. And in that time, we've been able to build, some real headway in being able to deliver these kind of extraordinary experiences that now spread, across 60 countries around the world, fast approaching sort of 300, really heavily qualified local experts on the ground delivering these. And, we've just signed up just very close to 2,500 travel agents to use the platform. So we're in a position where the uniqueness of some of this extraordinary travel that we're able to deliver is really starting to find a foothold, both in markets here, certainly New Zealand, in Canada, and more with travel agents, and more and more. And the bulk of our 2,500 of all of you come from those 3 countries today. And from where we're sitting, we see that as, as really as core to what we do and what we deliver at Tripfuser. You're fundamental to the way we think about the future and the decisions we make within our business day to day. So a chance like today to talk a little bit about us is a great one for us. So what is Tripfuser? Going right back to the beginning a little bit, Tripfuser is really a global marketplace of these local experts. These experts are, heavily knowledgeable, skilled deliverers of travel experiences with, significant experience in the geographies in which they service. They design, they build, and they deliver, customized local travel to these 60 countries. And they do that by using, deep local connections with experience providers and accommodation providers, restaurants, and other types of experience providers around the world to come up with these extraordinarily well-designed trips. They, for us, sit, if you will, at the heart of how we deliver on our promise to deliver these amazingly localized experiences. And so when we think about how the marketplace works, it works so that as a travel agent, you can access the market and our marketplace. And as you do, you get access to all these local experts. You can access them in a range of ways. They can design something completely from scratch for you. You can explore our gallery of sort of now 1,500 of the best incredible trips that we have across our 60 countries are all there available for you to be able to work through yourself as an agent, to then work out what you want to share with your clients, or ultimately for you to work through that with your clients as well, to be able to design this sort of customized travel that they're looking for. We do this with our proprietary marketplace platform, and that is, built around the idea of our trip plans or our itineraries, which are rich in content and visual and shareable, and connected up with reviews and maps, and other detail about various of the elements of the trip plan. We're going to see some more of them as we talk a little bit about the 100 plus close to home trip gallery, but they're there for every one of the 60 countries in which we service and the 1,500 trips in the gallery. We've now delivered a little under 15,000 trip plans in total to customers over our 4 years. And the quality of what we were able to produce in a short period of time is obviously really, for us, core of what we're doing. I'd say equally, the support function through our travel concierge team, which we introduced last year, means that you're dealing not just with the local entity on the ground, perhaps in a different time zone. Our travel concierge will support you in your time zone and then other time zones to ensure we give you a timely experience in delivery of a trip plan and ultimately service your client really well for you. And then finally, there's a series of, what we call, back-end platform pieces, which are, for us, pricing in local currency, billing platforms, booking engines, and the way in which we pull that together means that you're able to service, very clearly and easily understand how you service your clients and deliver a great product for them. I think as we think about what that all means, I think there's always been a certain trepidation, I think, in certain parts of the travel agent segment about dealing direct and knowing that you have that support. Part of what our platform really allows you to do is to deal direct, but know that you've got someone in Tripfuser sitting there making sure you're as well supported as you can be through that journey. So we deliver a very high touch and high supported experience for you and your clients. If that's a little bit about us, in terms of, sort of who we are and what we do, I think we've been very fortunate in that a little over a month ago, you'll have seen us announce that the RACV has taken a strategic investment in Tripfuser. They've invested a little over $3 million, which for us was really an endorsement of the model that we were building. They could see that, the future of travel and a lot of the future trends that are pushing through the way in which customers want to travel is really about customization and personalization. And we hear a lot about it in terms of, the research that we see within travel, but at the coalface, it really is digging through and finding these extraordinary experiences that are unable to be found in other ways. And I think ultimately that was why the RACV felt it was a really compelling proposition, and obviously supported us equally. And I would say this because we've got an amazingly passionate team of people at Tripfuser who both love travel and the idea of servicing our agents, so customer service. And so the ability to be able to see that in action meant RACV were even more happy to see a great team supporting some great technology. I'll probably pause for a second and think one of the things we've been doing since COVID hit, and much like everybody else in the market, is trying to think through what a post-COVID world looked like. And while we might well have liked that to be more like August or September, maybe a little bit further out than it is today, we were looking for sort of the key trends we think which will drive the market. There's largely kind of 4 of them we think will be fundamental to the way in which we think the traveling public will change how they go about considering travel. And I say here both domestic but particularly overseas travel. The first of the 4 trends we think is private travel comes to the fore. The comfort of knowing you're traveling with a group where you can guarantee reasonably the safety or their safety coming into the travel, we think is going to be very important, particularly for a demographic that's slightly older. Group travel before, obviously incredibly popular, but now thinking about it, am I comfortable enough with some of the experiences I've seen both in COVID rolling out and the way in which we know particularly the virus works? Am I comfortable moving around in a group of people I don't know? And we think that private travel is going to start to have a more of a resurgence in the market than perhaps it had before. Customization and personalization, which is obviously a mega trend in travel, we think gets even more focus now, because understanding every step of the travel process you're about to go through, understanding whether that involves group transport or not, or understanding whether that involves different elements and different parts of that travel, which is whether that's hotel with hygiene standards or safety standards. So we do think that customization and being able to articulate every step of that process is going to be really important going forward. Clearly, safety standards would be the sort of third major trend. Understanding that, when you're putting a client into a particular location, that they have a hygiene policy that meets industry standards, that the nature of the way in which you're going to be participating in those travel experiences either limits or doesn't limit you. You understand the risk about traveling in those areas is going to be really important as we go forward. And so the final piece we think is going to be fundamental is local knowledge. So knowing what's happening on the ground, understanding, and whether it be at that sort of country level of understanding, can I actually come into the country without quarantining? Or more importantly, what's the situation on the ground in terms of safety? How do I get around in a reasonable way? Or, has the normal pathways been broken because of the nature of COVID? So we do think that those four sort of trends will from our perspective be ones where we think they're going to be a really important part of sort of the language, at least, of travel going forward. Probably the key bit for us as we think about the markets is going to be that actually we take the view that travel agents are going to be a fundamental way of allaying these concerns in a way that perhaps the online universe hasn't been able to historically, and in the way in which we think about the future may well not be quite sufficient to be able to provide people with that complete comfort. So we do think a world that looks like a much more travel agent used world is the one we're going into post COVID, once we can get some borders open and we're comfortable that we're safe to travel again. So to that end, we think that the skills that sit in those four trends are going to be useful ones that we can play a role in delivering for you through our marketplace. And equally, we're going to be very important in talking to customers and clients about that. So to that end, what have we been doing? You're going to hear from Ash. She's going to walk through our 100 plus close to home gallery. We probably took a view that said we would hope that the Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific Islands might well find their way into a travel bubble by, later this year. We were hoping that might be September. Whether that's a little bit further delayed based on what we're looking at now, obviously is a subject to conjecture, and we watch that very closely. But, putting out there or building for us now, which I think is about 114 local trips of high quality in Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands, is sort of our first way of putting in the hands of agents the ability to start a conversation with your clients, start to talk about that first step of travel, which is travel bubble number one. Now that might be confined to just Australia to start with, once we can get some state borders open. But over time, we think that becomes the next logical bubble. And obviously there's a series of countries that, the Australian government is talking to about what happens at what time going forward. So that gallery of those trips is obviously there today, and we're going to see some of that. The second gallery we're working on is what we call high impact, low contact. So really high impact travel. So travel that has, great and rich experiences, but that ultimately is low contact travel, but also in countries where the virus COVID-19 has had a very limited impact. That gallery will be out probably a little later in the year. We think it'll be over 100 trips from countries that have had limited, and that's a very limited exposure to big virus outbreaks. And, some of the kind of countries we put in that bucket are, places like Vietnam, who's managed it pretty well, and potentially Japan, depending on how they come through the next couple of months. And so our ability there will be able to give you the guarantee that, any of the transport in those galleries is not group. The group tours there are no group tours in that sense, and that all accommodation providers are ultimately going to have to meet minimum hygiene standards to ensure that we're doing everything we can to limit the contact and the ability for someone to ultimately contract the virus while traveling. Our final gallery that we're contemplating at the moment is one which we call Price of a Lifetime, which is a little more a gallery that is, I want to go to a place that's had some virus hits, Italy, for example, and ordinarily that might well be beyond the means of budgets, but because of the nature of what's happened in those countries, we're seeing some really extraordinary pricing on the horizon, to encourage people to come back once borders open. That gallery is probably towards the end of the year, but starting to look for international travel in the middle of next year. So those are the strategies that we're looking at. And they're the things that we've been pulling together to start to enable us to talk to you about those. And so we'll be keeping you updated, all the entire agent network on those as we continue to build. And then it's incredibly important that this is being a first step in our sort of first webinar, and we look to continue to do these and engage much more with our travel agent network. It's kind of three areas we're going to talk to, and Ash will talk a little bit about the ability to participate in these at the end of the webinar today. But we've been consulting on our close to home gallery with agents about product construction. What are you looking to see? What would you like changed? What works for you? What doesn't work for you as we build these galleries? So we're going to look to do more of that consultation with agents and really take that view that you're getting from clients day to day in terms of building what we put in front of people. The second is we're looking at building some marketing tools that allow you to take what's in the gallery and then ultimately wrap that up in your own brands and push that to your clients. So enable you to really have the beginnings of a digital conversation that leads into a lead ultimately into yourself and your agency to start the conversation about traveling with people again. And we think that has some really interesting potential. And and then sort of the third area we're looking at is really our marketplace platform and how we develop that going forward. And so that for us is things like focus groups. It's pushing new features to the agent network so that we can get feedback really quickly on whether they're things that are working well or need improvement, and looking to work with you to ensure that if there's ways we can make it simpler or easier for you to access our platform and ultimately the marketplace so you can deliver for clients, then that's something we absolutely want to do. They're our three really important areas. And I think probably the final word for me today is just to thank you. We love the fact that there was nearly 2,500 travel agents signed up to use the marketplace. Pre-COVID, we were seeing some really interesting trips being built by our local experts for agents. We've probably got half a dozen where we put on the dream trip board. Several extraordinary trips through Italy, some amazing ones through Africa, and a couple of extraordinary European trips sort of top the board. But the ability to deliver these kind of extraordinary experiences all over the world in a really meaningful way, well supported, is obviously what we aim to do for you today. So, and I'd make this offer that, obviously today, if you've got questions, drop those into the chat. We're happy to answer those today. But equally, if you've got questions outside of this, when we post the video later today, I'm happy to have my email address on there, and feel free to reach out to me directly. If you've got questions, reach out to Ash, Chloe and Ashley and the rest of the team. We're very much here and very keen to hear your feedback on the platform. And so thank you. And I get to hand back to you, Ash, start looking at the gallery.
Thanks, Matt. That was great. So I guess we all know that 2020 got off to a pretty rough start. Matt has spoken about, a lot of exciting things that we've got up and coming, and we really just want to be here to support you in those conversations that are going to start beginning to happen when the borders start to reopen. As you've kind of already realised, whether that's been through trade press or through internal emails that you may have received from us, is that we have proudly and recently launched our domestic trip gallery. And this dedicated domestic trip gallery has more than 100 fully customizable trips that are designed by local experts on the ground in Australia, New Zealand, and in the Pacific Islands. So I'm just going to go through the gallery, show you how you can navigate from your agent dashboard to this gallery, and then go through a few of our favourite trips. Okay, I'm hoping you can all see my screen. You can have a thumbs up. Excellent. So for those of you that may not know, this is the agent dashboard. And without going into too much detail about it on this call, I just wanted to show you how easy it is to access the Close to Home gallery from this page. Simply click down in the bottom right corner on the Close to Home call to action, and that will launch our Close to Home trip gallery, which, as Matt said, currently has 114 custom trips designed by local suppliers. Of those 114, I think more than 60 of them are in Australia alone, with about 54 of the rest of them in New Zealand and the Pacific Islands. We also have 11 dedicated local suppliers, that have worked to curate these trips from scratch based on the knowledge that they have of their country. Our domestic gallery covers everything from long weekends away to iconic bucket list trips and everything in between, whether it's 5 days driving through the Red Centre, or it's 4 days wine tasting in Tasmania, or even 9 days of adrenaline-fueled fun in the South Island. These trips are 100% private and then can be tailored to suit any request and any budget that your client may have. Now, Matt said that we do have a bit of a vision board around our favourite trips on the platform, and prior to COVID, they were all these, extraordinary Italy trips and European getaways. But since we've launched this domestic gallery, we also have our eyes on a few locally grown trips as well. So we're going to go through a couple of our favourites and just show you in detail some of the great product that these local suppliers have come up with. And then I'll also go into detail how you can customise these trips and utilise them for your clients. So the first one that we're going to have a look at, and this is our fan favourite, this is a 5-day self-drive Red Centre experience. As I said, this is a favourite amongst the Melbourne team in particular, and it's crazy to think that, this incredible trip is in our own backyard, yet, we haven't really experienced it as much as maybe we should have. And now we've got a really great opportunity to promote, incredible landscapes that we have within Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. So this trip in particular by Federica, a local supplier within Australia, includes 4 nights accommodation across Doubletree by Hilton in Alice Springs, the Glen Helen Lodge, Kings Creek Station, and the Lost Camel Hotel at the Ayers Rock Resort. Not only does it come with that accommodation, you'll see that it has 4 breakfasts, ground transportation in the form of 4-wheel drive vehicle hire, daily breakfasts, and a number of great activities that will actually go into as a part of this trip. So on day 1, you can see that upon arriving in Alice Springs, you'll pick up your 4-wheel drive, or your client will pick up their 4-wheel drive hire vehicle before taking part in a kangaroo sanctuary sunset tour that walks through a 188-acre wildlife reserve and celebrates iconic Australian red kangaroo. What's great about this itinerary view is that you can see day by day, but you can also see a breakdown in our detailed itinerary. So not only does it include the rental car that I've just spoken to, the accommodation that is included, but it also includes the tours, and you can have a breakdown of specific details of every aspect. It also has all Google reviews, so you can see, and your client can see that, this is a great trip. On day 2, you will leave Alice Springs behind and make your way to Glen Helen, enjoying 130 kilometres of landscapes to the West MacDonald Ranges. And as part of this, the local supplier has provided a number of great recommendations for walks and stops along the way, including the Allery Creek Big Hole for a swim, which to me looks unreal. I can't think of any, I've never experienced anything like that before. On day 3, as part of this trip, you'll travel to Wataka National Park via a scenic route on an off-road adventure. This Morini Loop Drive weaves its way through Huss Bluff Aboriginal land, and you break up this journey with stops at Ginty's Lookout with stunning views before enjoying and stargazing at the Kings Canyon. So we'll just welcome a couple more people in to the call. On day 4, it's a really early start as you wait to tackle the 6-kilometre rim walk to the top of Kings Canyon. Again, something that I'd never heard of before seeing this trip. Before jumping in your 4-wheel drive, ready for your drive to Uluru in time for an afternoon tour. Here you travel for 1 hour on the friendly camels in the spectacular desert landscapes with stunning views of Uluru whilst watching the sunset. Of course, nothing tops off a trip, especially in Australia, without returning to the farm and enjoying an Australian beer, wine, champagne, and traditional bush food. On the final day of this particular trip, you'll begin with a 5-hour desert awakenings tour. Imagine watching the sunrise with Uluru as your backdrop, enjoying breakfast in the desert before embarking on a guided tour of the base of Uluru and learning the history of the area with an expert local guide. So that's just one example of, incredible experiences that have been pulled together by someone that knows the area like the back of their hand. Another one of our favourites, especially for those of us who are in Melbourne and dreaming of escaping the Melbourne winter for some sun and sand, is this 6-day Whitsundays magic trip. Now, this trip is pretty incredible. It includes 5 nights accommodation across Qualia Resort, Beach Club, and Australia's first underwater accommodation, the Reef Suite at Great Barrier Reef. It includes 5 breakfasts, 2 lunches, 1 dinner, airport transfers, and activities. Let's have a look. So day 1, after arriving on a scenic flight to Hamilton Island, you'll be picked up by your driver and taken to the private resort. For the first day of this trip, you will be free to relax as you please and gaze out onto the beautiful Great Barrier Reef. On day 2, take the opportunity to tour the Whitsundays Islands on a half-day return scenic cruise. This cruise, of course, includes a complimentary charcuterie board, unlimited beer, wine and soft drink, as well as up to 2 hours at the southern end of Whitehaven Beach for you to explore, whether that's gently lapping up the water, taking in the cool views, or enjoying the Solway Circuit on a walk. Day 3 takes us to a free day to explore Hamilton Island at your leisure. And whether that be golfing, diving, biking, or relaxing by the pool, you're sure to find it on Hamilton Island. And what's great about our model is that whatever it is that your client would like to do, our local supplier can have that organised for you. On day 4 and 5, this is where it gets really exciting, is you will cruise through the Whitsunday Islands to Hardy Reef, where you'll spend 2 magical nights in Australia's first underwater accommodation with front row seats to the underwater world of the Great Barrier Reef. I don't know if any of you have done this before, but the pictures and the images look unreal. On these 2 days, you can enjoy a reef scuba diving trip, a scenic helicopter flight over Hart Reef, before returning on day 5 to your final night's accommodation at a 5-star beach club on Cat's Eye Resort. I don't know about you, but I personally, if I got on this trip, I would not want to come back, especially at this time of year. So now that you've seen an example of some of the content that can be pulled together by our local suppliers, what I'm going to do next is just run through how quickly it is for you as a travel agent to access this content, whether that's to customize this trip, to download a branded instant quote, or if you wanted to design a trip from scratch. Just as a side note, when it comes to pricing, all of our trips have a minimum 10% commission for all agents, and you have full pricing control. So you can increase or decrease this amount as much as you wish within the agent dashboard. Let's go back to my personal favorite, the Red Centre experience. And I'm just going to go through the 3 steps on how to customize, get an instant quote, and also design a trip from scratch. So an instant quote is basically like a brochure page or a brochure link in this example that you can send to your clients to have all of the information that they need around this trip. Once you've selected this trip from the gallery, it's as simple as clicking instant quote. You've got the ability to rename the tour so that it's personalized to your client. You can include your client's name, and then you can also show or decide if you want to show or hide the price at this stage. If you choose to make this price visible, here you also have the ability to mark up the trip as much as you like. As we mentioned before, this does come with a 10% commission to travel agents, but you do have the ability to increase this if you wish. That's as simple as an instant quote gets. If we then click create, this is going to process an instant quote in the back end with all of the personalized details. And you're now presented with two options: to download a PDF to send to your clients with images or with text, or to open a custom URL trip plan that you can send directly to your clients. That's what we're going to do with this one, just so that you can see. You'll see that the Tripfuser branding has now been removed. And as part of your login and setup, we will add your logos that will appear in the top left corner. You can also see at the top here, Travel with Ash, my personal travel agency group, has a custom URL. But whether or not you're from Flight Centre, Travel Associates, I Talk Travel, Where to Travel, that will actually be branded with your company branding in the URL as well. Now, to share this with your client, it's as simple as copying and pasting the link in an email or sharing it via these share buttons. You can share via social media or copying the link. And again, you can also download a copy via PDF. What's really great about this custom quote is that a lot of agents wonder, great, once they've seen the trip, how do I know that they're going to come back to me, you being the travel agent, and not go directly to Tripfuser? What's great is if a client clicks to customize this trip, they will be directed straight to your customer details. They don't have any inroads to Tripfuser whatsoever. They will only be directed to you via email and by phone. So we're keeping those clients with you, just providing this incredible product for you both to utilize. Again, if they click to contact Ashley, as it says here, they'll be directed to your contact details. So there's no way at all that we're going to be contacting your client directly. The next thing that we can do is to customize a trip. So you might have found in the trip gallery a really excellent trip, but you know that your client wants to tweak day 3 and day 4, or they want to do a specific trip that they might have found online. What we do is we click customize, and here we are presented with a design form, which will ask a few questions that will then be sent to that local supplier, Federica in this instance, who will then customize the trip based on those requirements. It's a really simple one-page form that asks for dates, the number of travelers, the type of accommodation, and then also the budget. Once you have submitted this, the local supplier and the travel concierge will work together to ensure that those requirements that your client has requested are returned within 24 to 48 hours in a custom white labeled itinerary. And then the final way that you can use Tripfuser's products and access their local suppliers is to design a trip from scratch. So if we go back to the close to home gallery, you might have a client that has its heart set on a particular trip. They want it to be private, they want it to be custom, and you might not have necessarily found what you want in the trip gallery. Here you can design a trip from scratch with our local suppliers. Simply click Design Your Own Trip, which you'll find throughout the site. And here you can design a trip from scratch. Similar to the customization form, this form requires a few extra details, such as the types of activities that your client may like, as well as specific requests. Again, we'll go through the number of travelers, the type of accommodation, the budget, and here, as you can see, the type of activity that they may be interested in. On the next page, it will then go into any specific requests that your client has requested. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a mock-up for you so you can see how this works. So we'll say July 2020 might be a little bit ambitious. We'll say 2021. 2 adults, a couple, interested in adventure, food and drink, and sightseeing. The type of accommodation that they're after is mid-range, and the budget per person might be $2,000. As I said, this form is a little bit more in detail than the customization form because we're designing this trip from scratch. He also can choose what kind of accompaniment you would like, whether that's a driver and a private tour guide, or if it's going to be an independent trip like a self-drive tour. We have when do you plan to book, just so that the local supplier can, see what's, I guess, what's out there in terms of deals and in terms of when that client would like to travel. And then a great feature for travel agents is, do you have a trip in mind? Here you have the abilities to suggest a trip that you may have already seen. We've heard from some agents that clients come to them with a group tour itinerary, but they want that trip to be private. Here you've got the ability to upload that itinerary, whether via PDF or by web link, just to give our local supplier an understanding of the exact requirements that customer might want. If you don't have a suggestion, that's also fine. Just ensure that you add in the additional notes everything that it is your client wants to achieve of this trip. Finally, we'll put in the customer name so that when the itinerary comes back, it is completely personalized. And that's kind of the design process from scratch. As you can see, the process is quite simple, and we do our best to take the hassle and the effort out of your hands, delivering you the best white labeled custom itineraries for your clients. Recently ATAS accredited, you can rest assured that we have you and your clients front of mind and ready, so that when the borders do reopen, we're here to support you with all of this incredible product. Obviously, this has been a very, very quick overview on the basic features of the platform, specifically around the domestic gallery, but I'm more than happy to conduct a training session in more detail, whether that's independently or with your team at a later date. So if that's something you're interested in, please don't hesitate to reach out. But on that note, and transferring to the next kind of step in the process, I'd like to introduce our travel concierge lead, Ashleen, to speak to you about her area.
Thanks, Ash. It's great to see some familiar names on this call and some new ones as well. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ashleen and I work in the travel concierge team based here in Melbourne. So the travel concierge is a global team that is really designed to support you as a travel agent. The travel concierge worked very hard to get you a high quality, customized trip plan back from the local supplier as quickly as possible. So as a team, we are working 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday through to Friday. Our global team is based here in Melbourne, Cape Town, Texas, North Carolina, and New Zealand. So we are set up like this because it really allows us to take the information provided by travel agents and communicate that with local suppliers in their time zone. And this really speeds up the customization process and helps us get a final bookable customized trip plan back to you, ready for your clients to book. And our job as a travel concierge is really to work for you, and we really want to help you convert your clients. And as a travel agent on our platform, we really want you to feel fully supported by us, and we really pride ourselves on the regular and updated communication we provide to our travel agents throughout the customization process. So whether that's by phone, the integrated chat we have on the Tripfuser platform, or by email, we're always keeping in touch with you to let you know what stage of the process your trip is at. So the travel concierge do work very closely with you as a travel agent, as well as the local supplier. The good news is we have these really strong relationships with our local suppliers in destination, and that means we can match you to the best supplier for your client's needs. And that takes a lot of pressure and work away from you as a travel agent, as I know you have very busy and crazy days as it is, and it allows you to have that one relationship with us here at Tripfuser, whilst we maintain the strong relationships with close to 200 local suppliers globally on our platform. You know, you really are our customers here at Tripfuser, and we want your experience to be easy and seamless. So depending on how you prefer to work, we are happy to accommodate that. For example, some agents I work with, they prefer to email me, others will call, whereas some just jump on the platform and use it for themselves and are happy to chat one-on-one with the local supplier via our hosted chat on the platform. Now, a common question I do get asked is how we choose our local suppliers. So our local suppliers are DMCs in destination. And to be a local supplier on the Tripfuser platform, they must have exceptional third-party feedback, have been in operation for 5 years plus, and have all their insurance and business accreditations relevant to the country they are operating in. And that's all before they then go through Tripfuser's internal onboarding process and internal training. We also have an ongoing review process at Tripfuser of our local suppliers. So it is essential to us that they work to the Tripfuser standard, and local suppliers on our marketplace are continually reviewed based on the service they do provide. So I hope to work with you all in the not so distant future. And if you do have any questions about the Travel Concierge team or local suppliers, do pop them in the chat box and we'll answer those questions at the end of the session. Back to you, Ash.
Thanks, Ashleen. I hope that this insight from Matt, from myself and from the Travel Concierge has given a good introduction into who Tripfuser is and our domestic product, and has also given you a few ideas on how you can sell domestic trips to your clients when the time is right. Now, if you haven't already and you do have some questions, please pop them in the chat box, as I'm now going to pass on to our COO, Chloe, who's been collating the questions throughout this session, and we'll direct them to the relevant person. Chloe, what questions have you received?
Hey Ash, thank you, and thanks guys for such a comprehensive overview. Nice to meet everybody that's on the call. There's a couple of questions that have come through. This is the sticky part of the webinar, so please let's get some good ones going so that I can hand it over to the team. There's quite a few that have come through around the design and customized part, so we might try and talk about those first, and then let's go through a couple around cancellations, which is probably at the forefront of everyone's mind at the moment with what's going on. So Ash, a couple probably to head your way. First question that's come through is just around matching a trip with a client that's on a budget. So the example that's been given is if somebody has $100 per person per day, looking for 3-star accommodation, just entrance fees, maybe bed and breakfast. How do we work with that, and what would we do?
Yeah, so I think what's great about our platform is that we do have local suppliers that, they cover a broad range. They can cover a broad range of budgets. As you saw in the design form, we have things from, like local accommodation stays, 3-star hotels, as mentioned in that request, all the way up to luxury. So as long as it is clearly identified when you're submitting that, that trip request, that the budget is, on the lower side, our Travel Concierge will work with the local supplier to really see what they can do within that budget. Now, it may mean that, there are a couple of things that activities and things that, might not necessarily be added, but, we are pretty good. And I think being a private custom platform, we'll do everything that we can, or Travel Concierge will work directly with the local supplier to meet that budget as best as possible.
Yeah, cool. So we can basically design a trip to anyone's needs, working with the supplier, and Ashleen's team will help with that. There's actually quite an interesting question here, and maybe it might be an idea or something that we can work with the suppliers on, but Chris has just posted, we understand that the local agents don't necessarily organise flights, and it is a conversation that we've all had internally before. But the question has come, and I'm not sure if it's for Ashleen or Ash, but are we able to send the flight detail to the local agent and have it included in the itinerary, and then adjust the price accordingly, as you can see through the markup phase?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I think that's a great question, and it is certainly something we can do. That's where the Travel Concierge will really come into play. You can contact me, for example, as your Travel Concierge, and say, I just want to add in these flight details. Once you've got that final itinerary there, I could actually do that on behalf of you and then communicate to the local supplier. Hey, just so you know, I have added in a flight product here. Don't worry about that. You're not expected to fulfill that. I've done that for the travel agent so they can present this trip back to their client. So that's where you'd really use us for that one.
Nice one. Thanks, Ashleen. So there is, I'm just going to try and go through just while we're on the topic. What's the rough turnaround time for customised quotes, Ashleen? Do you want to run through what that looks like?
Yes, so we really do aim for 24 to 48 hours. And that's what the travel concierge job is to do, to ensure you do get that customized trip plan back within that time frame. Just at the moment, due to COVID, as I'm sure you'll all know, a lot of our local suppliers are on part-time hours or part-time working days. So what we're doing is working very closely with them to make sure we manage your expectation from the moment you do submit that inquiry. So if it is going to be longer than that standard time, we will let you know straight away, so then you can manage the expectation of your client.
Awesome, thank you. And what are the payment options? Do you want to run us through how we'd actually pay for the trips once we get to a booking point?
Yes, so the payment options, you can pay on credit card, you can use eNet if you're an Australian-based agent, and PayPal is an option as well. We do have an option for on account for travel agents, but that will be agreed prior to you using the platform, as that's an option we need to enable in your account. So if that's something you guys are interested in, where you get invoiced on a certain time period, let Ash know and she'll be able to set up a call with you to talk through that.
Thanks. And probably one last one. It's just around the emergency number. So if there's anything bad that happens during the travel time, any mishaps, which happen all the time, what's the benefit of working with us and our local supplier?
So once you've booked a trip with a local supplier, they will then provide you with all that post-booking documentation, and included in that is their 24/7 local provider service support number, emergency number support number, sorry. So you will get that upon booking. So you'll have that support number on ground. And then also you do have us at the Travel Concierge as well, based in Australia. And we'll be working with you and the local supplier should anything go wrong.
Awesome, thanks. Matt, there's probably one here for you. That's pretty important, particularly at the moment, but who's financially liable if an individual supplier does go out of business?
Yeah, so I can talk to that one. So the policy that we run at Tripfuser works this way. In the instance where someone who's due to provide a trip that hasn't been able to provide that trip and goes out of business, the first thing we do is we automatically, this is Tripfuser, will automatically go to other suppliers in that area and see if they can replicate the trip. That's part one. Two, the second piece is then we work with you to do that. Now we take that responsibility. We've done the vetting. So in the end, that the situation we would be exposed to there, which is, hey, someone's paid a deposit, and then 60 days out, which is typically when people pay for the balance of their trip. The gap between there and delivery is the part where we're taking the risk on, so that you as the agent don't take that risk. So we make that fairly clear up front, in our T's and C's and how that works, so that what we're trying to make sure of is that you're comfortable that ultimately, if someone can't provide that service, you're not left having to try and find a way through it and obviously out of pocket in doing that.
Cool, thanks. And probably on a similar topic, do you want to talk around our cancellations and refunds, particularly whilst in COVID and what's been happening?
Yeah. So cancellations obviously is an interesting one. So the way in which the policies work is that our policy is fairly clear up front. It says, obviously, once you pay your deposit, and that deposit can be as little as $100, but it can also be, and might in some cases, a local supplier will have a different policy. Once that you've made your deposit, you don't pay anything on the balance of the trip until usually about 60 days out. At 60 days out, unless there's a fixed item that requires payment, that's when obviously those dollars become at risk. Our policy is for travel credits. Frankly, it has always been during the course of this. But I will say what we do is that the Travel Concierge, we have our best efforts undertaking that what we'll do is work with the local suppliers so that dollars that are not yet expended on costs come back to the client. And so we've worked very hard over the course of the last, like everybody has on cancellations, I'm sure, to bring back a lot of those dollars back here. But the cancellation policy is a travel credit one.
Cool, thanks, Matt. Just quickly, while we're on deposits, Ashleen, do you want to just give a little bit more information on how it actually works and the final payment, what the process is, and how we work with the agents?
Absolutely. So they do depend on the supplier. So the local, the deposit to confirm your booking starts from $100, but the local supplier can add to that for any non-refundable items, usually flights, tickets that they need to purchase straight away in order to confirm the dates that your client has requested for those. So it will vary depending on the trip for your client. And if that's something that's a concern of straight before you start customizing your trip, you can pop that in the chat, let us know, ask the local supplier approximately what it will be. Otherwise, it will be displayed on your trip plan when that trip is ready to be booked.
Sorry, my Sydney connection is it's bouncing in and out. Apologies, everyone. I was lucky enough to escape the borders, and I've got some serious Wi-Fi issues here. So let me know if you can't hear me, but the last question I think that's come through at the moment is just around the vouchers and documentations that are provided after booking.
Yes, so your client is provided with all the documentation and information they need post-booking, and these will come from the local supplier. And again, here at Travel Concierge, we ensure that you get those when you need them and on time and with all the information included, so your client has a fantastic trip.
Awesome. Ash, I think we've just about covered everything that's come through for now, so I will hand it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chloe. Guys, if you do have any other questions or you think of it once you've gone away from this webinar and you do want to reach out, I will send a follow-up email for you. So please reply, and we'll direct your questions to the relevant person and ensure that we get answers for you. I guess just to finish out this webinar, we really want to thank you for attending the session today. We hope that it's given you a little bit of insight into Tripfuser, and we can't wait to see you trialing the system when you have the time. As Matt mentioned a little bit earlier, I would just quickly like to talk to you about a few of the exciting things that we have coming up that we would love for you to be a part of. Firstly, we are looking at creating a working group of agents who are interested in reviewing and providing feedback on new trip launches, around the galleries that we're hoping to launch near the end of the year, the ongoing expansion of our domestic gallery, and working with us on marketplace features and functionality to ensure that we are continually delivering you the best experience. So if this is something that you would like to be a part of, please reach out to me. Secondly, again, as Matt mentioned, we are looking at or considering rolling out, a trial marketing piece where we give you the opportunity to select some of our incredible domestic trips from the gallery that we will then turn into a branded email for you to send directly to your clients. If this is something that you would also like to trial, please send me an email and we can work out how we can get this started for you. And lastly, we are launching a Facebook community dedicated to Tripfuser travel agents, and we would love for you all to join. You will receive a link to this via email after this call. Now, thank you again so much for your time today. It's been great having you with us, and we hope that you have got a lot of insight out of listening to all of us speak. Your feedback is incredibly important to us, and as this is the first Tripfuser webinar, we really would appreciate any feedback that you have, big or small, that we can then take into our future webinar series. But a big thank you to Matt, to Ashleen, and to Chloe for your time, and to all of you for attending. I look forward to speaking to you all very soon, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks, everybody.